really show Nicky. You should know every single player, every single jumper number.
Yeah. Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. The centre man, he doesn't know anything.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast, episode 2. We haven't been thrown off the internet. Liam's been hard at work researching, as those of you watching on YouTube can see. Liam,
that's right.
We've survived the network cull. We're back to episode 2. Welcome. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good after a solid weekend of footy. I've never watched that much footy in a weekend in my life, and it's only the preseason. What am I actually doing? Look, I must be keen, but I'm feeling pretty good. Just reading the old game by the West. Look at that! What a delightful read that was. Not a sponsor.
No, not a sponsor.
But it gave me some good insight into this season and what's coming up, what to expect. And I say good insight, and I use that term, as I used it. We'll see how we go.
Well, hopefully we have a good show planned for you all today. First of all, thank you for those who tuned into episode 1. If you haven't, It's not that hard to find. Just go to your relevant podcasting platform and have a listen, have a download. Thanks to those who have left reviews so far on Spotify. It's all much appreciated. And also for the subscriptions on our YouTube channel as well. So with those general businesses out of the way, Liam, I believe you've devised our spine here. You've planned our 666 structure. So what are we kicking off with today?
Well, I'm kicking off with the fact that you can actually find us now officially. At the end of the last episode, I said if it was wrong this episode, I'd tell you. I can now tell you officially at Dodgy Punts on Instagram, at Dodgy Punts on YouTube. We are live. We are ready to go. We don't have to correct that. We're good to go. Now, the 666. A bit of a warning there. I stepped out of the square, but that's okay. We're starting with some news today, Jesse.
It's pre-season.
It's pre-season. All right. It doesn't matter. Okay. We'll touch on that later on. I've got something to say about that. Anyway, we're going to jump right into the news. And news, I think one thing kind of took over all of the news cycle after the community series. Happened in the very last game of the round, and something that we're trying to get rid of in the AFL, one would say, the high shoulder missile into the throat area late outside the field of play. But it definitely happened against us in the Saints versus Kangas game. Jesse, what do you think about that?
Well, I thought we went from having the most boring pre-season game, at least on paper, to certainly the most interesting coming out of it. A lot to go through here. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a very high, very late impact by Jimmy Webster on North Melbourne captain Jai Simpkin. A nasty incident that, frankly, I thought we'd left behind in the 80s. It's not a hit I've seen that I can immediately recall since probably Byron Pickett about, 20 years ago now. So, and look, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that, Liam, if you can think of a more recent incident of that gravitas, apart from Barry Hall, but that's different again.
No, Barry Hall's in a league of his own. He's got his own thing that he does, and it's not, his head highs are not tackles. He's just like throwing fists left, right, and center. That's what he did, old Barry. It's why we loved him. No, I think I can think of one from last season, actually. Cozzy Pickett did himself launched his shoulder very late against, I think it was Bailey Smith, I think. And I watched a replay of that recently, actually, and I sent it to you because I was like, remember this? And I couldn't believe at how Cozzy, how he's launched himself into Bailey Smith's head. And like visually, Cozzy's was much worse. But effect, Jimmy Webster's was pretty harrowing, actually. Because like you said, we haven't seen this kind of stuff. Like back in the 70s, back in the 80s, maybe early 90s, that was like reveled. People used to love seeing that stuff. People were like, oh yeah, it's all part of the footy. It's all such a tough game. I look at like the old, like people watching clips. Like I love watching Americans watching footy and just being completely confused by the whole concept. It's it's like a pastime of mine. But I watch those old like bumps, big hits videos from back in the day. And I kind of cringe at those now. Like Corey Enright on Silvani all those years ago. Like I look at that, I'm just like, oh, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. And the AFL's trying everything they can.
We're 3 minutes in, and that's your first correction, Liam.
What's that?
That's your first correction, Darren Milburn, not Corey Enright.
Was it Darren Milburn?
It was Darren Milburn.
Corey.
My mother, hello, Karen, if you're listening, would kill me if I got that wrong because she holds a 25-year grudge against Darren Milburn for that specific incident. So better not get that one wrong, certainly for dinner time.
Fair shout, fair shout. I'll put like a little Liam corrections tally in the pod somewhere on the YouTube because Lord knows I'm going to need it. Okay, so Darren Melbourne, but you know what I mean, though, man. But thank you for the correction. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like AFL was trying to get rid of this, and I don't want to say it doesn't seem to be working, but I think this is going to offer them a really big opportunity to stamp their foot down, kind of like they did with Sam Powell-Pepper last week. This one's got to be higher. The suspension just has to be higher.
I definitely agree. I think we have a real line in the sand, sliding doors moment here in terms of how the AFL wants to treat concussion, because it's pretty well known, I think, around the periphery of the sport at the moment that there will be serious legal action against the league and other leagues regarding CTE, head trauma. Yeah. We've seen, us as West Australians, we've seen what's happened to West Coast players. Dan Venables, Brad Shepherd. Brad Shepherd had to quit his corporate career because he couldn't read his computer screen because of the impacts of concussion. It's debilitized his post-football life and his ability to earn a wage for his family. And we now see a potential, and we obviously don't know what's happened with Jar. We're not privy to the medical records, nor should we be, frankly. But
sure.
This type of incident is a traumatic brain injury. And, while sure, 30 years ago, it was all fun and games. We love seeing big hits in the sport. We like seeing clean hits. And frankly, I don't think you can look at that hit from Jimmy Webster and say, that's a clean hit, and that is a fair hit in the spirit of the game. I was actually a bit disappointed with the North players as well, frankly. I don't think they did enough in the aftermath. I think your players, your captain.
To remonstrate, you mean?
Yeah, to remonstrate. I understand it's, you don't want to be giving away suspensions and everything, but I think back to what Andrew Gaff did to Brayshaw in the Derby all those years ago. Yeah. And I think of all the ugliness that came out of the incident, the one thing that stuck with me is how that Fremantle team banded around Brayshaw to go after Gaff. And they made next hour and a half for him absolute hell. And that's what I'd be expecting if I go down in a game because of a hit that frankly is dirty. I'd expect my teammates to have my back post that incident. And I didn't feel like North did for Jai. And that might be a symptom of the modern game, sure, but it did disappoint me slightly to see the lack of real passion from this North side. And to me, that's a big worry for them going into the season proper, because where is the passion for a working class club like North is? Where's the passion to stick together and look after your own? I didn't see it on Sunday.
Do you think there's a little bit of the whole, like you said, the game is changing and there's starting to hand out fines much more frequently, suspensions much more frequently. Is that kind of playing into that whole aspect of the game, though, coming in for your mates, standing up for your mates? Are you doing your team a disservice if you're then going in there and getting yourself 2 weeks for having a bit of an argy-bargy? You know what I mean? Like, so do you reckon that's kind of playing into the mindset of it a little bit?
I do, but you can let someone know that you're there without going to the tribunal.
Yes, that's true.
And I didn't see enough. I didn't see enough receipts handed back to Webster for what he did to Simpkin.
Yeah. Yeah, there was kind of like a little bit of a push and shove, and that was it.
If you watch back the Brayshaw-Gaff derby, the Brayshaw-Gaff derby back, you'll see a lot of footballing incidents directed at Gaff that were, quite cynical, but there was enough plausible deniability with them that you could allow the game to play on with a free kick or minimal tribunal troubles. Yeah. I think, obviously I'm not advocating for complete unsanctioned violence on the football field, but I think there's ways that you can get a bit back for your teammate, and I don't think North really stood up for Jai and for what the club is trying to build and for the culture they're trying to build. We'll touch on Alistair Clarkson in a second, but it seems like he did more in terms of letting Webster know than any of his players did.
Yeah, Alistair wasn't very happy. But it's actually an interesting point that I didn't actually pick up on, but now thinking back about it, because I watched a few quarters of that game, and after that incident happened, I don't even think I recall any of the North players going over to Jai to see if he was okay. It wasn't like, sometimes if someone gets injured, they kind of go, check on him, make sure they're all good, give him a pat on the shoulder, say it's all going to be all right, pal. I don't think I even saw any of that, now that I think about it. It was just kind of like, now it's quarter time and we move on.
It was a pretty bad thing. It was pretty obvious, I think, that he was concussed from the moment he went down. So I don't mind unqualified medical. No, I think that's okay. We don't need to go and crowd him at the situations. I'm completely fine with that, but
Sure.
I didn't like the seeming acceptance of the incident from a lot of the North players. I'm very interested to see how these two teams interact in the season proper. I think that we may see more of it there, and frankly, I think we should from North.
Yeah.
Obviously, fans have long memories.
When do they? Oh, yes, we do.
When do they play?
When do they play? Well, you find that, I'll tell you, because fans do have very long memories, and I know that when I go to the Derby, and we still boo Gaff. We still boo Gaff for what he did because fans remember, and it's always interesting religiously. But it's always interesting to hear the Eagles fans going, "It was so long ago. Why are you still doing it?" It's because we don't forget. We don't forget things like that, and no team does. You'd be crazy to think that any team would forget something like that. But maybe you're right. Going back and watching it, in replay and actually seeing how bad it was. Maybe the players didn't see. Maybe only one or two did. Who knows? But if they're going to watch that vision back, which they definitely will, when they play in round 13.
Round 8.
Ooh, so he might be back by then.
And that's the thing, because 6 to 8 has been the number generally bandied around, certainly in football discourse, water cooler chat, Facebook comments and all that. And obviously that's unreliable. That seems to be the general feeling of where this probably should lie. And I think I'd certainly struggle to argue less than 6. I think eight's probably about right realistically. If you're giving Pal Pepper 4 for a clumsy and frankly dumb football action, but I don't think anything that I can look at and say, wow, Sam Pal Pepper has really stepped beyond the laws of the game with this. I think it was just stupid. Whereas it was
clumsy and stupid, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing clumsy about this. This was completely intentional. You don't leave the ground to bump, regardless of whether it's a clean bump or not, without the intention to, really lay into an opponent. And that's exactly what Webster's done.
One thing they're trying to get out of the game is leaving your feet and charging late, when you can take the body. And, I think you can say it was a rush of blood to the head, or, the Saints have come out and said he's been, he's a clean player, has been, just one of those things that just happens. But the thing is, though, it can't be a thing that just happens if we want to, preserve this game until so we'd have to start wearing elbow pads and helmets like it's the NFL. We just can't. We can't go down that path.
How many times have we heard this? How many times have we heard this? It's out of character. Gaff was the same.
Yeah.
Chris Judd with the chicken wing was the same. I think Bachelor Hooley, when he got Walid Ali as a character reference, was the same. We're starting to run out of this because we saw it as well in the waffle with 2 Peel Thunder players suspended for inappropriate sexual conduct, and the line coming out was it's out of character. Is it? I'm not sure it is. If they've done it, and we're now in a position where we have to suspend people for extended periods of time, for whether it's off-field, on-field, anything. Mm-hmm. Its character is built by actions, is it not? Unless I've missed something there. I don't accept the out-of-character argument. And it's a weak argument, in my opinion, elsewhere in the world, and it's a very weak argument in this circumstance as well, I think.
It's accountability, right? So it's the accountability of the whole thing that seems to get lost in a lot of these decisions, especially when you take things like if they argue something in the tribunal. Like sometimes I understand, and St Kilda have said they're not going to do it. No, they're not. That's going to accept what the tribunal's decision is, which is fine, good for them. They probably should, but it's accountability, and this is probably a good segue into Alistair Clarkson, because obviously he said something that can be considered quite derogatory, and in retaliation to all this, and he's being held to account, and rightly so, for what he said. But I'm just wondering if that shine's being kind of shifted across to Alistair and what he said. What are your thoughts on that whole situation?
I mean, obviously, it's a comment that in 2024 probably doesn't need to be made. I think that's probably the fairest way to describe it. I am definitely disappointed that we have to have this conversation and shift it away from the on-field footballing incident. This isn't a podcast, frankly, for political discourse or anything of the sort.
Please no.
Please no. No, thank you. But look, what I will say is I think you're right. I think the actual crux of the issue has now somewhat shifted in terms of the narrative of the story, which was probably always going to happen as soon as this came out. But I think while Clarkson needs to be condemned for his comments, we need to make sure we're not losing sight of the issue here, which is the fact that Jai Simpkin's career, life. And I don't want to get, over dramatic, but ultimately we've got precedent for this, both in Australia, in English football, in American football. Sports that involve the use of the head in some capacity do carry concussion risks. And while we don't offer protection to the head, except for players acting in good faith, and I don't think Webster's acted in good faith here. We've seen in cricket, Will Pavlovski's gone off again with another concussion for Victoria in the Sheffield Shield. In the current sporting landscape, and I accept that there will be fans that say, I want it back how it was in my day, and that's fine. And that viewpoint for them is completely fair enough, because that was what they grew up with and that's what they enjoy. But the reality is we now collectively know better than to be doing this and to be accepting this as acceptable play.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, back in my day, it's what we used to have. But, you hear this a lot in just regular discourse. Like, oh, it's how it used to be in our day. It's like, that doesn't matter. Like, we've moved on, we've developed, we've changed. And it's okay to kind of come along for that ride, especially if the general consensus is that it's better for everybody. And that's, it's something that the old school, like I said before, some of it's really kind of cringy nowadays. It's really hard to watch some of that old stuff like back in the day. For me anyway. But that's just how I see it. But no, I agree. Alistair Clarkson should be held accountable for what he said. It's not his first time. It's not his first rodeo. I believe he had to apologise for something at the end of last year as well. I can't remember what exactly it was, but I think he chose words poorly.
He's been in this situation. He's more than his fair share of times, Alistair. And look, I'm not going to defend that. It just seems to be him. But
it raises your point, though. It raises your point about how is it a character issue? Like, just on the wholesale basis, is it just like it's just a character issue? Anyway, we'll go down that rabbit hole too far, I feel, if we keep going. Goodness me.
Yes, we need to pull the right rein and shift to the middle of the course and go after. Are we doing pre-season or are we doing Total Eclipse of the Dart next, Liam?
Jesse, my friend, it is that time of the night where we have to go to you for your Total Eclipse of the Dart. Now, for new listeners, what this is it gives Jesse 2 minutes to go on an absolute rant about whatever he wants, with a time limit, lest we forget, because he bloody needs one, don't you?
I most certainly do. You give me 2 minutes again this week?
Did you want more? Or do you want one?
I only need two. 2 is fine.
2 is fine. All right. Let me get my old man fingers going. Here we go. I had the timer ready this time, you'd be glad to know. Unlike last week where I was fumbling around for probably as long as it took for the Total Eclipse of the Dart. Jesse, your 2 minutes for the Dart begins now.
Opening round. Why are we starting the season this early? Why am I here? Why am I doing a round 1 preview on the 4th of March? Like, Liam, I'm being serious here because this attempt to cash in on Code Wars, which is so early 2000s. Like, it really is. We don't need to be doing Code Wars with the NRL. I don't think NRL supporters care. I don't think AFL supporters care. I don't see the point in having 4 games in jurisdictions that aren't going to probably draw full houses with the exception of the Gabba. I don't see the point in this round. It breaks up the season again. It gives teams that aren't playing this week an inherent disadvantage against those who are next week. And yes, there's a shade of bias in there given Fremantle play Brisbane. But I do wonder how the other teams feel about this too. And others, supporters of other clubs who aren't playing this week, let me know how you feel in the comments of the YouTube post or DM us on Instagram. Just tell what you think about this, because I see it as 8 clubs, some of which are likely top 4 contenders. Some of others may not necessarily, but they can pick up games here. They can pick up points. They can get residual fitness, and we're doing the season at the start of March. I haven't seen footy cards in newsagents yet. I've seen very little chatter around the general excitement of the competition. Hey, AFL's back in a few days. It doesn't feel like the start of the season. It feels like this quasi-bizarre pre-season tournament that almost seems to exist outside of the season, and you can tell that by its name. This isn't round 0. This is round 1. Why are we calling it round 0? You're playing for points. It's a round of the premiership season. Do we get round 00 next week? Is it just roulette now? Are we just moving the whole game to Crown? Like, what is the point? It's silly, it's gimmicky, and it's embarrassing that we're doing Code Wars in 2024. That's all I have to say.
Oh, that was good timing. I was about to do your 3, 2, 1. 1. Done.
Why use many words when few words do trick?
Few words do trick. That's true. Now, sorry, that was childish. I apologize. No, it's an interesting point. And I think it's one of those ones that a lot of people have scratching their heads. I think now it's just kind of moved to the point of acceptance where it's like, okay, well, we have round 0 now. But I kind of get your point. Like NRL fans do not like AFL and vice versa. Obviously, that's a huge generalization. But the general scope, no one cares. No one who watches NRL is going to care that AFL is starting when, NRL's not in town. Doesn't make any sense. But I agree with you. I never really looked at it from the perspective of match fitness until I was watching the Community Cup games. And I was just like, they were talking about how, Freo and I believe also Port have a full week when their opponents for the following week for round 1 are going to have one game in the bank already.
What I don't get about the gimmick, and I'm not going to make this Total Eclipse into that too, but I will say this. I will say that AFL and NRL are on the same streaming platform. So this can't be revenue generated in terms of getting new subscribers to your streaming platform of choice if the people you're specifically targeting are there anyway. KO doesn't disappear into the ether once the game's finished. There's this thing called a replay. So people who want to watch the AFL while prioritizing the NRL side, which is completely fine, are going to do that. If I'm on KO at 4:40 on a Sunday and I happen to see that there's 2 good NRL teams playing and the AFL game is something awful like North Melbourne versus Gold Coast, then I'm probably going to watch the or at least see how the NRL game's going before I dive into the North Gold Coast game. I just don't get it. I don't understand why we're back doing Code Wars. We're circling the drain of doing what the A-League's done, which is try and just start a war with everyone and see if we can come out on top. And I'm not saying we're going to go the way of the A-League, but it seems unnecessary. If people want to watch the product because you're putting on a good product, they will watch the product.
Now,
it doesn't need to be gimmicky.
This is coming into Dart 2. It's coming into Total Eclipse of the Dart second coming.
That's it. That's the end of that.
The new CEO, man, he had to do something to kind of stamp his mark in, didn't he? I don't even know who it is. I thought it's because Gil's gone. Who is it now?
Gil's gone. It's Andrew Dillon, I think. I'm going to fact check that. You've almost stumped me.
Oh, wow.
We love a fact check.
But I think that was one of his first decrees when he came into the role.
Dillon.
Andrew Dillon. There's like one of his first decrees when he came in was this idea for opening round. But I mean, look, on an NRL tangent, I watched the Vegas match and I didn't understand why, because it just felt like a regular NRL match to me. Nothing really too fancy or special about it from what I could tell. Tell me I'm wrong. If you watch the whole thing, like the start and the pre-show and the Matty John show afterwards, tell me if I'm wrong. But I didn't see anything special or over the top about it in any capacity. It was a strange move. Anyway.
I understand they couldn't do it this year because the fixture had been finalised and tourism bodies get very cross. But if you have to do opening round next year, if you have to do it, make it gather round and include everyone. Don't give us 2 gimmicks in a space of 6 weeks or 7 weeks. How it's 6 weeks. Don't give us 2 gimmicks in 6 weeks. We don't need everything round.
Were AFL fans getting bored for the reason all these gimmicks have to come in? To use a wrestling analogy, if a wrestling show looks weak on paper, they'll chuck a whole bunch of gimmicks into it to make it more interesting. But do we need that? I thought AFL fans were pretty just chuffed all around for footy to be back. I
don't see the need for 2 gimmick rounds in the space of 6 weeks.
Not at all. Because gather round's what, round 5? Round 4?
It's 4, and we've got Anzac round on after that, which obviously isn't a gimmick, but you have these.
No, that's not a gimmick.
You have these segmented rounds that then split us. I don't understand why we can't have Anzac round, the Indigenous rounds, and something down if we want to do a Pride round, something on that vein. I don't understand why we can't do those type of rounds and cut the gimmicks. Because
I look forward to seeing in the papers how much of a rousing success this was. Because we're bound to know exactly how good this opening round is going to be next week, I am sure. But we digress.
We will, and we'll talk about it.
We should talk about actually some of the Opening Cup. Opening Cup? No, it's not that. It's the Community Cup. Some of the preseason games that took place this weekend just gone. We won't go into too much depth because let's be real, it's preseason. And while I'll come to this a little bit later on.
Careful, Lee. You'll upset the millions if you say it's only preseason. You're not
Right,
allowed to
that's
do that.
I know. My God, it's like you upset me. It's not just preseason. It's fine. I'm bringing my own 2 minutes this week. It's not going to be 2 minutes. I'm just going to open up the floor to it, but it's my little take on something. But we'll come to that in a second. Actually, do you know what? Let's just do it now. Fuck it. Let's just do it now.
Do it now. Get out of the way.
We're on the thing now. I made the mistake of going on to the bastion of positivity Reddit the other week to read as to, I always check out AFL stuff. I obviously check out the Freo stuff, and and we'll get to Freo in a little bit, but it wasn't fantastic. But there was one narrative that I saw quite staunchly across a few posts where people were saying that the preseason, it's just a preseason match, it doesn't matter, and I can't disagree enough. Like, I understand that the whole point is getting the players up and going for round 1 or round 0 if you're so lucky. But the preseason game is kind of the whole idea. Like, you're meant to have your pieces in place. Like, you're meant to watch that game and at least see something out of that. You want to see what the summer's work has kind of come to. So when you get to that preseason match, you can at least see some sort of plan. And I just saw some really weird and interesting things on there about the preseason not mattering. I think it gives you a really good indication as to where a team is when you watch the preseason matches. And I think too many people flob them off as not important, when I think they're actually very important. It gives you really good insight. What do you reckon? Do you reckon they're important or not?
I don't think the results are important. I couldn't care less if we beat Port by 10 goals or lose by 100 in a preseason game. What I care about from a supporter's perspective, and this is just purely, again, nakedly biased Fremantle take here, but this is from watching Fremantle play, is that I want to see a structure and a game plan that is going to translate into round 1. Because if you take a game plan in preseason, there's a fair expectation that that's probably going to be close to the game plan of round 1. It'd be weird to do a complete 180 because then you've only got a week and a half, 2 weeks to prepare for it. What I saw from Fremantle on Friday, and we'll come to this in a second, was terrible. Mm-hmm. And too many supporters are dismissing that. And this might not just be a Fremantle issue. It might be an issue for other clubs, fan bases as well. But I feel there are too many supporters dismissing poor preseason performances by individual players and by the coaching staff as it's just preseason. When there are plenty of clubs in a situation where a best 22 is not finalised. So there are players that have certainly a level of expectation to perform in these games. That doesn't mean winning. It just means being effective in your role and also showing us as a coaching team that you are ready to go for round 1 and that you are going to deliver on the key performance indicators of a coaching staff, which is ultimately finals and premierships.
That's right. And, AFL's a business now. It's, gone are the days where you go and kick a ball. Now, it is KPIs. It is business. It's sport analytics down the line. And if you're getting past the preseason, any team, not just Freo, any team, and you kind of have a look and see where they're at, and you can't see where they're at, you can't tell what's been going on, then I think preseason's a pretty good indicator and it's pretty important. So anyway, that's my little rant. I got it out of the way. It's done now. Crikey Moses.
Thank you, Liam.
Just didn't make sense. I don't know why I keep going on Reddit. I don't know why I keep reading that stuff. Sometimes it's funny, and then sometimes you're just like, why am I here? What am I doing?
It's great. Should we get a Dodgy Punt's Reddit profile going?
God, could you imagine?
I thought the masses would love it. They'd love it. They'd love it. Posted the Fremantle sub. All them would love it. Anyway, let's talk about preseason, Liam, because there is a bit to talk about preseason.
There is. Collingwood. Oh, you go, mate. You go. I jumped on in. I cut you off.
I'll just rattle through them. Collingwood beat Richmond. Melbourne comfortably handled Carlton. Brisbane beat Sydney. GWS beat Gold Coast. Geelong beat Essendon. Port comfortably dealt with Fremantle. Adelaide comfortably dealt with West Coast. Bulldogs were way too strong for the Hawks. Although I will say I did like some of what I saw from Hawthorn in that game. That's the type of one where you can lose by 10 goals, but there's a bit to like about the way that Hawthorn played. And obviously St Kilda beating North, which I think we've covered certainly in terms of the actual content of the game in more than its fair share of coverage. But look, I'll throw it to you, Liam. Any immediate takeaways from the games you've seen across pre-season?
Yeah, there's a couple. First of all, the wind in St Kilda is insane. Did you see that goal that old mate, what's his name, Coleman Jones? just chucked on his boot from the center circle and it just went for a goal. I don't think I've ever seen anyone kick a snap or just a kick out of a clearance kick that's just sailed for years through for a goal. That's the only other thing I took out of that game. Although I also love how the Melbourne commentators all of a sudden know who Liam Henry is. That's good. Good for Liam. What else did I take away from this?
I will say that he did very well suit that St Kilda long sleeve stickman Guernsey. I will say that about Liam. He moved to Melbourne for fashion, apparently. So he's made sure he stopped by the DFO and gone down Chapel Street and had a whale of a time. He's tapped his debit card, which I'm sure Ross has topped up now with his new contract over at St Kilda. He's tap all down the shopping district and found himself a lovely long sleeve Guernsey. So I don't think St Kilda come back to Perth this year, which is a shame. I would love to have caught up with Liam from my seat at Block 300s.
As someone who sits next to you, I'm kind of glad they're not coming either.
Right. You have a derby, you've got Roy Lobb, you've got plenty to look forward to from me this year, Liam.
That is true. Collingwood versus Richmond. Look, aside from a bit of wayward kicking, nothing too serious or anything to really report from there. Couple of injuries.
These sides both play on Saturday. I don't think either of them cared.
No. Jack Graham looked like he did a quaddy like right in the very last few seconds of the game, which is a bit of a shame if it's a bad one. He didn't look very happy, and that's usually a sign of a few weeks, I would say. But outside of that, nothing to report from that. Anything on the Collingwood Richmond game from your end, Jesse?
I didn't watch it because purely for the basis that they're playing next week, neither side's going to care. I tried to stick to games that I might learn something out of, and I think generally speaking, I'm going to learn more from the sides that aren't playing in the coming days than I was from going and watching teams kind of play at 40% intensity. And if they were playing harder than that, fair enough. I didn't watch the game, so I'm not sure. But I went in with the perception that my time is better spent watching sides with maybe more to figure out than some of these opening round teams are, and Collingwood and Richmond didn't fit that bill. Fair
enough. Carlton Melbourne, couple of points. Gawn looks pretty good this year. I'm not going to lie, looked pretty good in the preseason. So see if he can keep going. Sydney Brisbane. The only thing that I took out of that game was that the power went out, delayed it by 30 minutes, which was quite annoying for me. I thought I was going to sit there and have a nice night watching the footy. What's that?
There was a snake as well, wasn't there?
I don't know.
A snake on the ground.
A snake caused it.
It was a snake on the ground. I don't think it stopped play, but there was a snake on the ground.
There's a snake on the ground. Oh, we got to get the snake out of here so we can play footy. I don't know. I didn't see the snake.
There used to be a pig at full forward. Now there's a snake at Blacktown. So the game is changing. I don't know if the snake was told to stand. I don't know if it was given 2 weeks for rough conduct, but it was there. It participated. Oh, Liam's been sent out to the other side of his house for 50.
Then we had GWS versus Gold Coast. Patches of good stuff from the Suns. Like some things looked really good. They were running really well, but it was like the briefest of patches. The rest of the time, Giants were just having a field day, absolute field day out there. So, I mean, I think they went on a 76-3 run at one stage, which again, preseason, doesn't matter, guys. But I think Gold Coast, has a similar kind of thing to Freo in a way, in the sense that, you saw like for patches where it looked good, but for the rest of it, you were kind of like, okay, so what's this? And I understand they're kind of adapting to a new coach and the Hardwick plan, so there's probably more of an excuse for them. But we'll see how that plays out in round 0, because they play round 0. There we go.
They do.
Geelong Essendon was just a match, nothing too crazy from that. I
don't think either side were keen to push themselves given where their list profiles are at.
No, not at all. You could tell as well. West Coast actually looked like they were trying pretty hard in their practice match. I think they were trying to the young kids were trying to get some practice in there. It was given a crack. They just still looked a bit nervous, maybe not quite at the AFL kind of level just yet. So I think they'll have a pretty long season. But like you said in last week's episode, at least they're giving it a red hot go.
And their game plan seems more conducive to scoring.
Yeah.
And some of the other teams in that kind of bottom 4 drain circling.
Listen, I'll put this last thing, and this will just be my other thing for the Port Adelaide versus Freo game, and that is the fact that it was the punt and pray, the spray and pray approach from Freo, and people saying, "Oh, we didn't have our best forwards in, We could have our best forwards in if we're just going to bomb it into the 50. The best forwards in the world aren't going to get that, especially against Aliir and Asava Radaglia, who looked staunch down there. Like that's going to be a formidable duo come for any team. They looked monstrous. Good luck anyone playing Port Adelaide this year. Oh my God.
I'd seriously question if Fremantle can win more than 4 games this year if that is the game style that they're going to adopt. I know that Jai Miss is a phenomenal forward. I think he has the ability to be a 60-goal plus forward this season. But if that's your strategy, half-decent defenders will let him have 2 max.
Yeah.
Because you cannot rely on that strategy.
No, you need to give him service. Bullet points to him on the lead. It's got to be done. But I mean, you look at the Sava, you look at Aliir, 2 massive people. Our team is very small. I noticed as well. We've got quite a small team compared to the other ones. And why you wouldn't put the ball to the ground so that our crummers can get around and do it would just make logical sense to me.
Because if that is the game plan, I understand that Radaglia and Aliir are probably on the more elite end of defensive pairs, but I mean, it's going to be Tracy. Tracy's going to play alongside Amiss, you would think, as the second tall. How on earth is he expected to do anything? This guy can't even average a goal a game. So how on earth is he expected to be productive? And I actually feel sorry for Josh if that's the plan for him, because all he's going to be able to do is crash packs trademark. and that's going to be the rest of his AFL career. He's going to be Kepler Bradley without the goal scoring.
Yeah, but we love Kepler. We love Kepler.
We love Kepler. We should get Kepler on the pod.
I'm down for it.
Make some calls.
Yeah, make some calls. Get Kepler on here.
But in all seriousness.
Okay, last point on the Freo. Go.
Last point. Teams who cannot score 12 to 14 goals at a minimum on a weekly basis will not make finals this season. With 3 years of stand made me absolutely confident that you have to be a free-flowing scoring team to be effective in this competition. Collingwood are the blueprint of that. Fremantle are the antithesis of that.
Yeah, it's hard to argue, unfortunately, but hopefully it's all been one big old rope-a-dope from J-Lo, and he's going to shock us all against Brisbane in round 1. Let's see how that goes. But that's the community wrap. Obviously, when we get into the season proper next week, we will start doing it.
Sorry, Liam. I guess Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn play tennis because they also played a game that we shouldn't just blouse over.
I took notes for all of them except for this one, so go for it.
Okay, well, I'll touch on this. Look, Bulldogs never really looked challenged in terms of actually winning, but I think there's something building at Hawthorn. I said it last week in the ladder prediction. I'm sticking with it here. I think there's something here. I'm not sure it's finals, but there's something here that makes me think that this Hawthorn side is going to be a lot of fun to watch in 2024. Yeah. And if I was a Hawthorn supporter, I'd be excited for round 1 because this is going to be a fun side.
They looked like they were having fun playing too, which was like, and Ginnivan brings a lot of that too. Ginnivan looked like he was having a blast out there. So I think he's done the right thing, win a premiership, next team, see what happens. Doing it right is old Jack, doing it all right. But yes, no apologies. I didn't actually write any notes for that game, so that's why I didn't say it. My bad.
That's okay. Well, that's pre-season. We don't have to think about that again for a long time, thankfully.
No, that's right.
But what we do have to think about, Liam, not round 1. We're not allowed to think about round 1. Andrew said no. We have to think about round 0 first.
Round 0 first, that's right.
Because the soft drink round, if you will, AFL 0. So...
Okay, very good.
So
it's the season light.
We're opening the can on Sydney versus Melbourne to start the season. And look, as much as I'm going to hang on round 0 being a complete waste of everyone's time, they've picked good games for it. I will give them that. They've put the right teams into the right games.
There we go.
This is something that I'm really looking forward to. They've really picked something for the battlers here with Sydney versus Melbourne. I think this is going to be a great game to sit on the couch at 4:30 Perth time on Thursday and watch. I'm very excited for this game. Liam, what are you looking forward to about Sydney versus Melbourne?
I think it's a battle of the behemoths for this year. It's going to put a lot of perspective onto where those two teams are kind of starting off for this season, and we're going to set them off on a trajectory. I think the one who wins, and this is the crazy thing about AFL, a lot of emphasis is put on the start of the season. winning this first match is vitally important, I think, for both teams to kind of set this season off on a trajectory that's going to take them to top 4 easily. So I think having it at the SEG is a huge advantage for Sydney, and
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it. I think we should chuck our tips in for it as well. Tell the people our tips. I'm going for Sydney by 3 goals, 18 points exactly is my prediction. Jesse, what do you reckon?
Sydney as well. Similarly close in terms of margin, but I'm going Sydney by 14. I think there's something about this Sydney side that I want to be on the right side of history with them. I feel like this is a real ships passing in the night game between where Melbourne have been and where Sydney have been in the last 2 years. And I think we're going to see a bit of a change of fortune for both these clubs. I know Sydney were in the grand final 2 years ago, but that was potentially somewhat of a surprise that they were able to get there in terms of that season going in.
Yep.
It would not shock me at all if we're seeing Sydney in September at the other G, the Melbourne one, playing for a Premiership Cup. So Sydney for me, but I think more than anything, I'm excited for this game. This is the game of the round for me. This is the game that I'm blocking out the calendar for, sitting on the couch saying, this is the game I want to watch.
I can't agree more. Give me 1 second. I'm going to quickly turn some lights on at this place because it's getting dark in here. 1 second.
We can't see you.
All right, who's next? Happy days.
Who's next? We have Brisbane versus Carlton next for a bit of Friday night footy. Great to have that
Friday
back.
night footy. Friday night footy. Friday night footy. What?
Some of us look forward to the games of football in Friday night. I look forward to Nathan Brown's really bad same-game multis in the coverage. Whichever you prefer, that's also fine. But, there's something for everyone.
I'm not going to say anything about bad multis. You will see later.
It's really bad. I laughed. I audibly laughed when I saw this. It's really, truly horrible.
Which is just saying something.
But crucially, not as bad as Nathan Brown's. Anyway, Brisbane versus Carlton, Friday night footy, a finals rematch from last season. Two sides that I think also have the potential to ship in the night, much the same as Melbourne and Sydney do. I know we have differing opinions on this, Liam, but I think this might be the season where we start to see Brisbane just trend down a bit with Carlton on the up. However, in saying that, Carlton have a couple of key outs here. No Sam Walsh, no Jacob Wiedering. For that reason, I think Brisbane are going to jump them here, and they're going to get their season off to a flying start. They're going to bottle up their 375 millilitres of success, crack open their 0, and get the point. So Brisbane by 9 points for me in an entertaining Friday night footy contest. Liam?
Brisbane for me as well. I think it's going to be, unfortunately, not as close as I think most people are going to expect it to be, because the expectations on Carlton are pretty high this year.
They are.
But Carlton are famously slow starters, famously. So I'm going to say Brisbane as well, but I'm going to push it up to 24. I reckon they'll win by 4 goals, I reckon. 4 goals. And you know what? Make it 25. 4 goals and a point. Why not?
We can do it. It's our podcast.
We can do whatever we want. You don't tell me what I can't do. 25 points. Brisbane.
Okay, you do that. Third game we're going to talk about. Well, if the first two games have been Coke Zero, this is probably more the Q Cola of opening round, and that is Gold Coast versus Richmond. We're really going all in on the soft drink puns here, but Gold Coast versus Richmond at Heritage Bank Stadium on the Gold Coast.
What else are we going to get if not for puns? Bring it on. I'm all for it.
Maybe just drop the T out of dodgy punts and just make it dodgy puns, an AFL podcast.
I'll scratch it out down the bottom.
just giant X in the middle of it. Not AFLX. Andrew, if you're listening, please don't bring that back. It's okay.
Oh, you didn't like AFLX, no?
I called round 0 a waste of time. Wait until you get me talking about AFLX. Good Lord.
Okay.
I mean, dearie me. But I suppose Fife got a premiership there, didn't he? So that counts.
He did, yeah. Count for something.
Good on him.
Yeah.
Good on him. So that's probably why he's playing next week as well. Good for Nathan. But no, look, Gold Coast versus Richmond at Heritage Bank Stadium on the Gold Coast. I think we're going to get a really, really good look as to where both of those teams are in the Marbia Chol Cup, in the Damien Hardwick Derby, whatever you want to call it. We are set for a really, even in the Josh Caddy Championship, if you want to as well, get a little bit niche.
So much crossover. What's going on?
this is just gridley. This is great. But no, look, in all seriousness, I think we're going to get a really good look as to where both of these teams are for season 2024. The season's not made by round zero. In fact, previous this year has never been a round zero, so you couldn't make that comment. But I don't think you can say that if Richmond loses or if Gold Coast loses, it's season over by any stretch of the imagination. But I think there's a lot more riding on this for Gold Coast in front of their home crowd, trying to get the Hardwick era going with a positive start against an experienced, a well-organised, and a robust Richmond side. Unfortunately, I can see this ending in tears for the Suns. I don't think this is the game they want to start their season with. I think they've got a real banana skin, even though the bookmakers don't agree with me in terms of who's favourite. I think this is a game that Gold Coast go into incredibly vulnerable. And for that reason, I'm going to say Richmond by 34 points. I think they're going to choke the Suns. I think there's going to be a total eclipse of the Gold Coast. And I think we're going to see a very strong start for the Tigers. Maybe not a start they'll be able to carry on with throughout the season, but they've probably got an ideal game for them. And the Gold Coast have probably got a game that is the opposite of that for their plans, their trajectory, where they want to be come the start of September.
Fair enough. Now, as we mentioned last week, Jesse's the analyst. He's the expert at this. I just go on vibes. And we said last week that my vibes for the Suns were pretty good this year. And do you know what? It's round zero. So I'm going to carry those vibes in. I think if they kind of have that running game that they showed against, oh God, who'd they play again? It was a good team. GWS? GWS. If they show that, GWS. Yeah. If they show that run that they showed for those little glimpses against a really good team in GWS, there's nothing saying that they can't do that for a more extended period of time against a team like Richmond, who's probably more around their end of the table. So I think I've got a feeling that they might pull this one off, but I agree with you. It's going to be really interesting to see where they do end up after this game. If they do lose by 6 goals, I think my prediction was very wrong last week. I think it might be pretty wrong already anyway, but I think it's going to be interesting to see where they kind of at. I'm hoping for the best for them because I quite like the Suns. I've got a bit of a soft spot.
Absolutely.
Easy for me to say, a soft spot for them. So I'm looking forward to them doing really well, having some success, some prolonged success, and I think we'll get a good indication into that this week. So fingers crossed for them. Gold Coast, but not by much, by 2.
But 2, that would be a real shot in the arm for them. I think that would just about give them the opposite to what I've said, which is doom and gloom. In fact, you probably actually couldn't ask for a better result for the Gold Coast. I think they're better off getting a close win than smashing Richmond 100%. In terms of getting that belief in a close game against an experienced, well-organised side. We do finish with a game that I'm looking forward to, but we also finish without a Sunday game, which I'm not really a fan of.
Okay,
I'm happy that we get back-to-back games on Saturday, but for those of you who don't really know me and what I do outside of football, Saturdays are a day that I'm quite occupied on.
It's pretty busy. But like you were saying, this before. You were saying this before, Jesse. You can always just watch the replay, mate. Don't worry about it. What are you getting upset for?
I can do that on Sunday. However,
calm down.
What I will say is, I think we have to. Luckily, my setup here has a couple of screens, so I can chuck on a certain rice casing on one side of things, and also chuck on KO on the other, which means we get to watch GWS versus Collingwood at the Giants Stadium. I think Mason Cox has called it a farmyard. I think we've had plenty of jibes at the Giants from Collingwood and vice versa. It's been a long build-up into round zero for these two clubs, and I think we're set for a very good game. But again, I think the market's got this one wrong. I'm happy to side with the reigning premiers here. I just think they're the best side in the competition. And when you're looking at round zero, when you're looking at early season games in general, keep it simple, stupid. I think for me, you got the best side in the competition. Sure, they don't travel much, and this is probably one of their only trips outside of Victoria this season. But I simply think they have a strong enough side to go up the road, get the 4 points, come home, roll in with their defence. So Collingwood for me, I'm going to say Collingwood by 15 points. I think it's going to be a close enough game. We'll see an honourable loss for the Giants, but I do think the Pies just have too much class on their side and too much strength in their list profile to be losing this game, because the reality is they can't afford to drop too many games this year. I think there's going to be a couple of sides up there pouring the pressure on at the top end of the table. These aren't games that they should be dropping, in my view, if they want to be back-to-back premiers.
Well, in my opinion, I think GWS are one of those teams who are going to be knocking on their door this year. And I think that especially when you're playing at the Sydney, what do they call it? The showgrounds. Not sure if you've been out there, man. If you've watched a game there, I've watched a few Freo games out there when I was living in Canberra and Sydney. Oh boy, what a fortress! That crowd goes nuts. There's so many people there. Just joking. There'll probably be actually for a Collingwood game. There probably will be people there. Freo versus GWS never brings a good crowd. But I think this year is going to be a good year for the Giants, and I think they're going to start this one off right. Looking at them and how they played, and again, I know preseason doesn't matter, but seeing how they were running the ball and the confidence they had.
Just ask Reddit.
Just ask Reddit. In a training drill, no less. It felt like they were in a training drill for most of their game against Gold Coast, but they still practice things and they still look polished and they still looked really kind of gung-ho for it. Kind of like Port Adelaide, who I think are the grittiest team this year. They're just going out there to hurt people. That's what I get from Port Adelaide. GWS I have a very similar kind of feeling about, except a little bit more poise in relation to that anger. And I think they're going to take it to Collingwood, and I think they're going to win.
We've gone quite different this week, haven't we? I've gone Sydney, Brisbane, Richmond, Collingwood. Liam, you have gone Sydney, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Giants. So you actually look like you've not tipped this week because you've got all the home teams.
That's right. Yeah.
So a bit dull from you, but look, let us know in the comments of the YouTube or via Instagram direct message who you think is going to win the opening 4 games of the season. You probably won't bet me. You can bet Liam though. Most people can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll keep a tally of our tips throughout the year, Jesse, so we can at the end of it we can see who actually wins the dodgy punt of the year, the dodgy punter of the year. It's either me or you. Well, there's only 2 of us.
We might get a guest on. Who knows?
That's true. That is true. All right.
Speaking of guests, what's going on in your podcast space, Liam? Bit of a plug here for your other ventures. What's happening in your other podcast this week?
You mean That's Rank, the That's Rank podcast, the podcast where we rank your ideas on the fly. Oh, look, we're having you on, Jesse. We're having you on. You're going to come and join us for a cheeky rank. And for those of you who are not familiar, although most of you probably who are listening to this probably listen to that too, so thank you for coming along. But if you don't and you're new to this, That's Rank is we rank things, but it's not that mundane. We have a wheel, actually. Here is that wheel.
I've been called a ranker multiple times in my life. In fact, probably upwards of 100.
Does not surprise me.
People come up to me in the street and say, "Jesse, you are a ranker," and I have to believe that this show is the perfect one for me. So I'm very much looking forward to coming on.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun. It's all improv. It's all improv. We're going to test your improv chops there, Jesse. We're going to get a topic, and we're not going to tell you what it is, and we're going to have to put a 5-minute argument forward as to why that should win the rank. It's all very fun. It's all improvised.
It's going to be something dreadful like top 10 Chelsea Flower Show ensembles, isn't it? It's going to be something that sticks me up.
Listen. We don't know either. Our listeners give us the idea, and we do it on the fly. So it could be that. So prepare for that, and you can just make something up as you go. It doesn't matter. Just be a bit funny. Just be a bit funny, Jesse. You can do that, can't you? You can be funny.
Many people would disagree. They're probably the same people that call me rankers, actually. But no, where can you find the That's Ranked podcast for those interested?
Every second Tuesday, you can find it on Spotify or your favorite podcasting places. So I think it won't be this Tuesday. It'll be the following Tuesday on YouTube. Do it there as well. Me and Rob holding that fort down. You can meet Rob over on the That's Ranked podcast. But yeah, every second Tuesday, come and join us. It's a lot of fun. We've been doing it for 2 years now too. So if you enjoy it, you've got so many episodes to go back and listen to. You're welcome.
The That's Ranked Network?
That's Ranked Network. We're starting it. Oh, thanks, Jesse. Thanks for allowing me a plug. That's very sweet of you. I appreciate that. It's only because you're on, I understand. But like...
Nothing quite like publicity for myself.
That's true. Jesse, well, let's move on to the next segment we've got here. We finished with round 0. We'll talk about round 0 in detail, all the games next week when we get to that. But we're going to introduce a new segment called The Punty. The Punty. And The Punty is our little award for the worst take of the week that we've seen throughout all of media. Now, who are we to say what the worst take is? We probably give a few of them ourselves, but we're not counting. We're like, those competitions where we're immune.
Diplomatic.
I was going to say like those competitions where if you're like part of the family, you can't win. That's us. Yeah. We can't win. We can't win the Punty.
So don't submit them. Don't smart asses. I can see you doing it. Stop it. Stop it.
That's right.
You're not allowed.
We want to get your ideas for the punty every week. So if you see a take in the media that you think is rubbish, put in our comments, send us a chat on Instagram, do whatever, and
Honestly,
let us know.
r/FremanLFC. I'm sure you'll find plenty in there.
What do you want to jump into your punty for the week, mate? Your punty nomination is.
I'm actually going with, and look, I'm going to tread carefully here because social media is a lovely place, as we all know.
Yeah, it is.
But I'm going to nominate the Webster family for the punty this week, for celebrating Jimmy Webster's hit on Joe Simpkin. It's given one of them is an employee at St Kilda's major sponsor, and that's now known. And look, honestly, good on the Herald Sun for publishing that, because that is a very, very good non-libel way to get someone in a lot of trouble when they've done something wrong. And I think objectively, I think it's fair to say I'm not going to be in any trouble for saying that was the wrong thing to do, to make those type of comments about the hit that was made. So
they definitely were downplaying it pretty staunchly. I've said the word staunch so many times this episode. Like they were downplaying it like it was all a big joke. They were. I
don't think they were downplaying it. I think they were celebrating it. I think celebrating is the right word here. So I think that's a pretty easy punty for me. The punty can be anyone. It can be media personalities, can be, your average Joe. If you get someone at the pub to something really dumb and it's not me, then submit that. But yeah, plenty of options this year. But I think that's a really strong way for us to start in round -1. We get a punty from the Webster family from me. Liam, who's your punty of the week?
It's a good nomination. I won't lie. So I was holding up the old game magazine before from the West. Now, I couldn't help but realize like some of these expert tips are in here, and some of them are fantastic. Like Benny Cousins, legend of the game. Premiership, GWS, sure. Wooden Spoon, North Melbourne, makes sense. Brownlow, Toby Green. 3 semi, in the ballpark kind of. Now, looking through the rest of these tipsters, and there are 9 of them, they've all gone kind of similar things, except for, Caitlin Bassett, Premiership Bulldogs. Wooden Spoon, Essendon. I didn't see that before. Caitlin Bassett, you might have just overtaken my actual punty, actually.
An ad-lib punty. This is what we get on That's Round podcast.
Tell you what, I should have read the whole thing. The problem is I stopped at Adrian Barrich. Now, this is going to be my punty for the whole thing because he's got the Wooden Spooners as Hawthorn this year. Hawthorn. Right. Now, here's the reason why I think nominated this for the punty. Adrian, look at me. You honestly think that Hawthorn is going to lose more games than North Melbourne and West Coast?
And Fremantle.
Shut up, Jesse. You think
especially
that he's such a shit. So you think that they're going to lose more games than those 2 teams? We'll stick with those 2 teams for now because that's all you need. Realistically, you only need to say that you think that North Melbourne are going to win more games than Hawthorn. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And they pay you for this, Adrian. They pay you to put this in here. God, you've been in the media for so long. I think you're starting to forget what's going on, mate. So that's my punty nomination. Adrian Barrich nominating Hawthorn for the Wooden Spoon. Now, I'm not too sure who Caitlin Bassett is. I'm sure she's lovely. But Adrian Barrich that's pretty cooked. Bulldogs for Premiership, Essendon for Wooden Spoon. That's pretty bad. But Adrian Barrich has been doing this for a hot minute, and he should know better. So that's my thing. And I'll when they inevitably win the Wooden Spoon, I'll apologize to you, Adrian. But right now, punty. What an absolute punty. Well,
that is our bulk of the show done, but we do have a little outro as well for you, and that is our dodgy punt of the week. Now, Liam, I'm being somewhat gatekeepy with mine because you have to have a certain bookmaker's app to get onto my dodgy punt of the week, and you're going to have to wait your turn as well, given it's going to be an end of season payout. But Liam, we'll start with you. What is your dodgy punt of the week for us battlers?
For you battlers, you guys are definitely going to want to gamble responsibly as well, always. Please always remember to gamble responsibly. Don't do anything that I'm about to tell you to do. Okay, so here's what I am putting out there for this week. It's a round 1, 4-leg multi, 1 for each of the games.
No, it's not. It's a round 0.
Round 0. Apologies. That's 2. That's 2 on the correction counter for today. That's 2. I'm pretty good. I'm happy with those odds, actually. It's pretty good.
For an hour show, take that. Absolutely take that and run.
Thank you very much. Now, where is it? Here we go. So we've got 4 games. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to put no money at all on this multi. Sydney to win by 1 to 39 points. Go low. Brisbane by 1 to 39. Definitely. Gold Coast. So Gold Coast, a bit of a coin toss, I reckon. 1 to 39. Gold Coast. Now, this is where my dodgy comes in. This is where my dodgy of the punts come in. GWS to win by 40 plus. They're going to paste the pies all over the Sydney Olympic Stadium Park. They're just going to do it. 40 points. And that will get you odds of 63-60 to 1. There you go. Bit of value for you there, Jesse.
So that wasn't 6,363
no.
Because it probably should.
No, probably
because there's more of a chance of me finishing this podcast and doing a Rottnest channel swim than there is of that bet winning, to be quite candid with you. But that's what we love. My bet, look, it comes courtesy of Tab Touch out here in the West, and they're currently offering boosted odds for Harley Reid to win the Rising Star. Does he win the Rising Star? Look, maybe, possibly. I don't think he's probably guaranteed it, but $10 at $10 max bet, I think that's a good enough little bet to have. Keep it on the side. Don't need to have a big bet because we're responsible gamblers here. It's a little bet on the side just to keep yourself interested. For this week, if you had to push me for a bet, I'd be quite happy to take Richmond 25 plus in that game against Gold Coast. I think that's a bet that I'm happy to place. Happy to back GWS straight out the win against... Sorry, happy to back Collingwood straight out the win against GWS. And also happy to back under 15.5 points for either side between Sydney and Melbourne. I do think that game will be naturally quite close.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Jesse, by the way, if you're looking for anything puntish that's not ridiculous, like I'm really leaning into the dodgy punt aspect of this, Jesse's probably going to give you the good advice. Don't listen to me. If you're going to listen to one of us, definitely listen to Jesse. But like we said, always remember to gamble responsibly. Jesse, what's the number people call if they need assistance?
1-800-858-858. And while we're talking about gambling, you can find me on SEN Breakfasts at 6:35 each Friday morning, and also at ozrace.com.au for all of your WA racing analysis and selections.
That's right. Lovely. A couple of plugs for you as well. We got the plugs in as well. Lovely. Well, that's going to wrap us up, Jesse. I reckon we've done well. We've got the community series out the way, moving into round 0, opening round. Next week, we will be back again to run down everything from top to tail. Jesse, anything you want to send us out with before we end up for tonight?
No, just this will be the shortest show we ever record. With only 4 games to preview and a quick pre-season recap. But thank you everyone who's listened to the first episode, now the second episode of the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast. We really appreciate your support. If you are enjoying the show, make sure you leave a like on YouTube and a subscription as well. Or if on Spotify, give us a 5-star review. We've seen them come in. We know you're out there. We know we're not just talking to ourselves like we're at a Perth drinking establishment on a Friday night. People are actually listening to what we have to say. And I'm sorry for that. But for those of you who have managed to listen to the first 2 episodes, thank you. We hope to continue to provide some more content for you as well. Not just the podcast. We might look at doing some other things as well as the season develops. Who knows? But thank you all for joining us again for our look at round 0. And we will see you all again next week for episode 3 of the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast.
Peace, everybody.